Good evening, friends, and happy second episode of the Reconnect Your Teenager podcast with yours truly, Emma G. If you do not know who I am, greetings. I am originally from New Zealand, now living in Washington, D.C., and doing all kinds of musical fun, including using music as a tool to help you reconnect with your teenager and teenagers reconnect with themselves using the power of songwriting and music. However, it does not stop there. No, my friends, because together I believe we really do achieve more. So I am pleased as punch to bring to the stage, put your hands together for the Faye Cox, all the way from near London. Who is one of those fantastic human beings that really uses her platform to elevate teenagers' confidence and help parents to also assist and guide their teenagers as they are stepping into themselves as whole human beings, not just children. So, Faye, greetings. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Fantastic. You also. Yes. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that your elevator pitch on your website is fantastic. You say where well-being leads to well-doing. You find information about adults and teenagers to build confidence, increase self-esteem and resilience, whilst also reducing stress and anxiety. Now, obviously for myself, I utilize music to do those things because they help to elevate oxytocin and dopamine and decrease cortisol. But you, my friend, have a very different approach. So please tell us about what got you involved in youth work and why confidence and how that all came about for you personally.
Well, I'm a mother of, I have two girls, two preteen girls, actually. One who's only got one more year until she actually hits that teenage stage. I also have a stepson who, believe it or not, scares me to even mention, is 20 this year. So I'm well equipped in this area. I've also worked with young people for quite some time, very intensely, at a local college where I live. And a lot of the students that I've been working with are either disengaging from mainstream school, have disengaged from mainstream school for one reason or another. Generally, there are some behavioral issues, but also I work with a lot of young people who have ADHD, which we're seeing more and more of, which also comes along with all its friends, like ODD and a lot of dyslexia. So these are some of the reasons why they're disengaging. And that's one of the reasons why I got more involved in privately working with young people and their families. Because what we were finding, and a lot of what I was hearing from parents, was that they just didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to connect with their child anymore. And they were finding that very difficult. And one of the messages I was also getting from the young people was that actually mum and dad weren't around so much. They didn't really know how to speak to them there. And one of the things they were all saying to me is that they're on their own a lot. And I think as parents, we think that our children need us less as they enter adolescence, when in fact they need us just as much, but in a different way. And in fact, some of them actually need us a little bit more.
I love that you're doing that work, especially considering how, to your point, we need support for our kids more than ever. But I think in some ways it's even been exacerbated because of the advent of social media and technology being, people always make jokes about being a latchkey kid back in the 80s and 90s, and that's totally fine. They've grown up to be well-adjusted human beings by and large. However, the latchkey kid now has television and social media really in front of them all the time. And I'm interested to know how that has impacted your work specifically over the years.
Well, what we're finding a lot more of is that young people are on their screens a lot more. But what we also have to remember as adults is, and this is one of my favorite sayings, is we need to model the behavior we want to see from our young people.
What? We can't spend our time all the time on social media. We have to model. Shoot. Okay.
Because if we're sat there doing that with our faces in our phones, which we're also guilty of it. When we, as parents, we need to become more mindful of some of our own habits that we're passing on down to our children that actually we're not even conscious of. So we're telling them, and one of the things that I used to get told as a child, which I never really understood, and I still don't get it now, is don't do as I do as I tell you. I mean, what is that all about? Okay, fine, brilliant. No, because actually, as children, and particularly as younger children, we mirror. So they learn, they do what we do, not what we say.
Absolutely.
And when they come into adolescence as well, they are watching. In fact, they watch you like a hawk. They're watching everything that you're doing, and they're still taking in and taking on board all of your good habits, but also all of your not so good habits. So as parents, we need to be very careful and mindful and work on some of those things and work on ourselves and think to ourselves, actually, how do we want to be perceived by our young people?
Absolutely.
And we have to have a big shift as well, which comes from not that kind of dictatorship parenting style. So we have to actually learn, and for some of us it's quite difficult because of the way we were parented ourselves, is actually one of the biggest things that I learned to do actually when I walked into a room of young people, because they do trigger us. We have to, as adults, they trigger us. They trigger a lot of our own adolescence, and not always in a good way. And I had to learn to communicate, not dictate. And that was a massive shift for me with working with young people. And that's a conversation that I also have with parents now. And it does make a difference, but it can be quite uncomfortable for us as adults to change our own mindset and our own parenting style.
I love that. So let's reel this back a little bit, because I'm curious. Your approach is very different to a lot of parents, or a lot of therapists, I should say, therapists, youth workers, youth coaches, etc., and that you really take a step back and address the parents individually as well as the teenagers individually. What, if a parent walked in right now, what would be the top 3 things you would, or maybe 2 things, if you don't want to go too far into it, but the elevator pitch, what would be the one thing you would say to a parent, like, hey, this is one of the most valuable adjustments you can make with your teenagers when it comes to navigating 2023? And then similarly, what would be one thing that you would navigate with a teenager?
The parent one is very easy. It's something I've had to do myself, again, working with young people and having young people obviously in my own home. And that is that you have to leave your ego at the door. I tried to lead with my ego when I first started working with young people. And actually, I got this wrong with my own stepsons, because I still did that ego-led sort of style of parenting, and that kind of still dictating, you will. And we totally disconnected. And this happened with the young people that I was working with at the college to start off with. So it was a huge learning curve for me. But I learned a lot of stuff very quickly, which now means that I can connect with young people really, really, in fact, surprisingly quickly, because our young people, the 2 biggest things that our young people want from us is to feel seen and to feel heard. So leave your ego at the door and shift that mindset.
I love that. Okay. And for teenagers, the same thing?
For teenagers, there is that ego, but asking a teenager to leave their ego at the door is a much harder job, because obviously there's some parts they just think they don't quite understand where that ego comes from. And we all know, obviously, with brain development, they still live very much in their emotional mind at that age. So to expect them to come to us with an adult brain is unrealistic. We can't do that because they don't have an adult brain. We're the adults, and we have to meet them where they are, not expect them to come up and meet us where we are.
For sure.
So for young people, it's really about finding out who they are, so where their values and beliefs come from. So having a look at earlier, because the thing that happens is we get into like our 30s and our 40s and we all go, oh, what's the meaning of life? Who am I? I think let's not do that when we get to our 30s and 40s. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. But hang on, let's give young people that opportunity. And ask yourself as a young people, not the question that everybody asks, which is, what do you want to do? Because let's face it, a lot of us at that age, we don't know what we wanted to do. I didn't have a clue.
I've met many 50-year-olds who don't know what they want to do. So there we go.
You can change career, you can change pathway through your life as many times as you want. Honestly, there's not one way, there's not two ways. You can change your pathway. Yeah, but we have to find out, the things that really make us tick as a person like inside of us. And as young people, they do have that. It's just that a lot of the time it's suppressed by maths, English, science, and the whole education side of it. But I've seen so many young people thrive once they come out of education and go out into the big wide world and actually follow their own path rather than a path that somebody else wants them to take. So
yeah, one of my favorite sayings is that adulthood is the process of teaching creativity out of the young person. And I think that's a really, to your point, we're often asking young people to regurgitate information and memorize stats and memorize facts and whatever, without acknowledging the whole person. Given that we are now, I think the pandemic hopefully has taught so many of us about the importance of valuing the whole human, the mental, the spiritual, the physical, the emotional, and the social. When it comes to your coaching of both parents and teenagers, is that like a together in the same room type thing that encapsulates all of those facets of self? Or are you really focusing on parents, this is how we can show up, and then teenagers, this is how you can show up to, become a whole, a more whole version of yourself?
Well, the first thing that I do, which is actually my favorite thing to do, and it's called a family audit. So, and this is a Human Givens approach that I learned and studied a few years ago, actually. And it's about working out the physical and emotional needs of everybody in the family, everybody who lives within one household. So in this, we discover, and one of the biggest things that we do discover is that no one feels heard or seen enough. So some of those emotional needs will be the need for more control. I don't like the word control, so I use autonomy, particularly for our young people. The need to be heard, both parents and young people. The need to be seen, but also the need for privacy, again, for our young people, is quite high. So we have this one session where we all sit together and we look at what everybody's needs are, and we discuss how we can then get everybody's needs met in a balanced and healthy way, and actually how some of those needs are being met in an unhealthy way, so that we can then address that so it's more balanced. And then what I do is I then see the young person individually and parents individually. So they have a couple of sessions individually. And then at the end, I bring them all back together. And then we look at what we've learned, and then we discuss what's happened in these individual sessions so that we can completely reconnect them as a unit.
I love that. You make that sound so quick, though. Like it's a couple of sessions at the beginning, a couple of sessions in the middle, a couple of evaluation sessions. Is a typical, working with you, is that a typical 8 to 10 week process, or how does that work? Because one of the things that I love that is almost detrimental to my career about youth work is that the aim is to eventually work yourself out of a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, by giving these young people the tools and the know-how and the constructive thought processes to help themselves out of sticky situations, what does that turnaround time look like for you?
That turnaround time is, it's between about 10 and 12 weeks, because there may be things that come up as and when things are happening, in that moment, in those sessions, that maybe we might need to spend a little bit more time on. So for example, I was working with a family, and because I work with a lot of young people with ADHD, I have an ADHD radar. So
Right.
it's kind of some of those that things that might be happening at school, like with their executive function, tidiness, self-regulation, all those kinds of things, I can spot them quite easily. So it may be then, obviously, we have that conversation, and we have that conversation with parents about, has anybody at school said anything to you? Maybe then they go off and they may then get an assessment, and in actual fact, the young girl did have ADHD. So then I tailored some of my coaching with her to help her with some of that executive function and self-regulation. So that kind of, a lot comes out. But those family needs audits, so much comes out in those sessions that I can just pick and go, right, okay, got that. Yeah, picked up on that. Language. So, I mean, I pick up so much on the language that people use when they're talking about each other or situations. So I can get to the root cause pretty quickly.
I want to pick on the language thing for a minute, because I am sure, like most educators and youth workers, that you have seen a significant shift in young people shying away from conversation. And so I feel like a lot of young people, tend to opt towards texting and Snapchat and all that fun stuff in place of having like a face-to-face conversation. Do you often find that your clients want to text with you in order to, find that languaging, or how are they showing up with regards to expressing themselves wholly, honestly, and confidently in those difficult conversations?
Yeah, well, with parents, obviously, I always speak obviously to the parents first. That's who I tend to have obviously my first initial calls and conversations with, and then because I see them as a family, I've already sort of met and started to build the relationship with the young person as well. So generally, they're quite forthcoming after that because of the evidence of what they've seen in the session that we've done as a family. But in general, texting, messaging. So with the students that I work with at my local college, if I need to speak to them about anything, I'll drop them a quick text message, and 9 times out of 10 they come straight back to me because they know it's me. But if you ring them, even though they know it's me, they don't necessarily want to talk. They might be somewhere where they can't talk, or they're not as comfortable talking. So our young people are definitely more comfortable with unfortunately hiding behind, say, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Instagram messages. So they do find that a lot more of a comfortable way to communicate. But I think, unfortunately, we need to re-educate young people in how to communicate effectively, because when they're put in situations where they're in front of people, and obviously when they go out into the big wide world, they're going to need to learn how to do that. And I think we are responsible for helping them to do that before they get there, even though they live in this digital world. The digital world isn't going anywhere, but we still need effective communication for anybody. I mean, even for them at school, for them to learn how to effectively communicate with their peers, with teachers, with senior leadership teams, with people who come in and out of school. We still all need this as society. It's all part of connection and community, which are part of our emotional needs as well. So we do communication is a big thing, and it's something that I talk to our students at the college about a lot. I actually do sessions on that, about, right, okay, body language. I mean, and how body language tells you so much.
Absolutely.
Their body language, you know, just like, what's your body telling me right now in this conversation? You haven't said a word yet. You don't need to, because I can see straight away.
Yeah, no, I love that. I found back when I used to teach at a university in particular, that one of the most effective ways of for my students to come out from behind the texting and the Snapchat and WhatsApp and things, although WhatsApp isn't a big thing in New Zealand, but definitely is across the US. One of the things that I found was when they were able to wrap their conversations and their thoughts, suddenly they're using vocabulary and expressing themselves in ways that you could not imagine. And I credit like the likes of Kendrick Lamar and Billie Eilish a lot, because, you know, being able to lead with such a wide variety of verbiage in their music is very, you know, it's had a huge impact on how I think a lot of young people communicate with and both within themselves, but also with their parents and so forth. With the body language component, however, I'm curious, is there like a mind hack or a life hack that you are sort of trying to incorporate with your young people so that they can start to feel more comfortable to show up authentically and honestly?
Well, for me, again, I think there's a lot for me personally, is to actually model it for them. So obviously I have a lot of empathy, and empathy is a massive thing when we're dealing with young people, because they can sniff out fakeness like a sniffer dog.
Yeah.
If an adult is not being genuine, if you're not being genuine with them, if they're not, they can tell straight away, and they will disengage from you very, very quickly. And to engage a young person, for them to disengage on you quite quickly, for you to then re-engage that young person, you've got a more of a fight on your hands. So it's really important for me that I have open body language, and I use empathetic language with them in order to build that rapport and relationship. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why I can now build those relationships really quickly, because there's no judgment. I see them for who they are, where they are before. So I see the person. So I always say, you know, don't shoot the messenger. So any behavior is a message. And for a young person, underneath that message is someone who needs some support. There is a need that isn't being met. But one of the things I'm always able to do is I always see the person underneath the behavior.
That's a superpower, because a lot of people can't do that. That's
now,
amazing.
I never realized that it was. I used to think absolutely everybody can do this, but it transpires that no, not everybody can.
I hear you. I started my career in the States as a street performer, and one of the things that people often would say to me was like, "Oh, you see people," and I was like, "Is this like the sixth sense?" But no, for real. Like that's incredible, Faye, to be able to really see the layers beneath the surface and really speak to those pain points is so important.
And using the music thing, actually, there was a young lad that I was working with. He was at a point where he totally disengaged in school. His social circles, shall we say, were not healthy in any way. He was heading down a path that could have led him somewhere, the unthinkable. Let's just put it there. And I was having a conversation with him one day. He'd been sent out. He'd had a blow up. So I was having a conversation with him, and I asked him the question, who do you want to be? So when you leave educate, who do you want to be? And he started saying to me, oh, well, so-and-so says. So I went, oh, hang on a minute. I went, whoa. You get to choose who you want to be. Yeah. And he went, oh, he went, no one's ever asked me that question before. I went, no, because everybody asks you, what do you want to do?
Oh.
But then he started telling me all these things, and I went, okay. I went, so the person you've just told me that you want to be, by being the person you still are now, by doing the things that you're still doing now, the behaviors that you're showing, the choices that you're making, are they going to get you to being that person that you want to be? And he was sort of like, no. And I said to him, what do you enjoy doing? What do you find really helps you when that anger comes and you feel, how do you express yourself? I said, do you like music? He said, yes. So I said, what kind of music do you like? So he was like, all the rap music. I said, is there anywhere you could go and record something and just write and rap out everything that you feel?
Mm-hmm.
When actually there is. And he went and wrote. And I'll tell you what, he's got a talent. He came back to me and he went, do you want to hear the song that I recorded? I went, yeah. Not my kind of music, but I have to say it was brilliant. I was blown away. I went, honestly, I went, and that, you went, yeah, I find music's I think music has such an important part to play for all of us. But I think particularly for young people, because that's how they first start to make sense of a lot of themselves, is the kind of music that they have. And then obviously they attract the same kinds of people who like that. So they have a familiarity. So they build a community around music as well. And it is a way of them being able to express themselves without getting told off, but express themselves without someone going, oh no, you can't do that. Just let it out.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I often, I have conversations with people. I'm a little bit unorthodox when I meet new people. One of the first questions I often ask them is like, "What's your theme song?" And quite often, we skip back to our teenage selves and think about, oh, Pat Benatar or Whitesnake or the Eagles or Metallica or whatever. I'm giving away my preferred genres here, but but when we think about those theme songs that we had as teenagers, and then sort of skip back to present day, who our young Generation Z people are now. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is writing that song for themselves, writing that story for themselves, which brings me to your book. You've recently come out with your first book. When did this come out? Yeah.
Making Sense of Me, yes. My book came out in October, actually.
Fantastic.
And this book it's a book to my younger self. So working with young people and to actually stop them from triggering me every time I got into a group or into a room with something particularly, I had to start going, okay, that triggers me, but why? Why is that? So I had to go back to my own teenage years, and I had to heal quite a lot of my teenage years. And that all got put into this book. So this book has been written specifically for teenage girls. And people ask me why it's for teenage girls. Well, I was a teenage girl once. So there's a lot of stuff in this book that will also help young lads as well. But I could only write it from a girl's perspective, obviously, having been a girl myself.
For sure. That's awesome. And you mentioned before we went live that this is the kind of book that is both for you want the parents to read it first before then working with their teenagers. Why is that? What's the thinking behind that process?
The reason for that is because, like I had to myself, is there are certain things that they may find in their young person quite triggering from maybe from their own younger or from how they the parenting style that their own parents had. So actually by reading this book, it's actually helping parents to make a little bit more sense of themselves, whilst also opening up some of those really icky, tricky, cringy, uncomfortable conversations, obviously with their young people that they may not know how to kind of navigate or approach. Whereas my book it's a teenage girl's guide to navigating the world, navigating the modern world. So I talk about self-harm, social media, our own values, beliefs, behaviors, how their mind works. So it's all that in a background, how to look after their well-being. I talk about relationships, the complicatedness of female friendships,
What are you talking about?
I have two girls of my own navigating two
Yeah.
different friendship groups. One of my girls, she's into football, hangs around, with a group of girls who are also into football, but also the lads. My youngest, who loves makeup and fashion, and has a group of girls who are a little bit more, how do we say? It's a bit of a stressy relationship. It's that typical, very, very typical girl kind of. She said something and mum, no, we're not talking now, and all that. So all that kind of stuff. But we talk about that in the book. But I also talk about the relationship that they have with themselves, because the relationship they have with themselves is the number one relationship they will ever have.
Amen. Say it louder for the people in the back. and that's absolutely right. That it's for boys in that regard as well, because
let's help them get there while they're young, so that they don't then have to go and unpick it when they're in their 30s and their 40s.
Right. What is self-love again? Yeah. No, that's awesome. So that book is available on Amazon.
It is.
And you're based in the UK, near London. Yeah. Do you also do coaching virtually as well as in person?
I do, yes. So obviously I do face-to-face, but I suppose one of the things we can thank COVID for, I guess, is that more and more people are now able to do things online. People are more comfortable with conducting and also receiving coaching, and know how to use all the tech that's involved in our online world these days.
Kind of. We're learning.
We get by.
No, it's one of the things that I particularly loved about COVID, if you will, is it brought me to the concept. Apparently, in Mandarin Chinese language, the word crisis is represented by two characters when written out. The first character is for danger, and the second is for opportunity. And I think to that point, you're completely correct. Like, we can stay so focused in life, not just through a pandemic, but in life in general, on the things that are dangerous, or we could look for the silver linings, look for those ways to navigate those relationships and those communication breakdowns and the social media pitfalls and ways to connect and things. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Faye. I really, really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you would like people to hear, to know, to learn while we have this space?
No, just really, like we touched on at the beginning, is obviously that I am a strong believer in that in order for our young people to do well, we need them to be well. And I think that's really, and I see that all the time. And how we can help our young people to be well is actually to have a think about their needs and wants, really, as well as our own, and also communication. Just communicate, keep the line of communication open, touch points if they're finding it a bit difficult because the young person's in their bedroom and things all the time. You'll be really surprised how much those little things actually mean the world to your young person, without them realize. They're not going, a lot of the time they're not going to say it to you, but honestly it's those things in life, isn't it? It's the little things that really make a big difference.
Yeah, show up and talk the talk, but also walk the walk.
Walk the walk, yes. It's a little bit harder for us all.
And leave your ego at the door.
Leave your ego. If that's the one thing anyone takes away, like a parent takes away from, is, and actually when I first did it, I actually had to visualize myself doing it and go, right, I'm walking into a room, I've got to take that out. I need to leave that here. Because if I take it in with me, I've lost already.
Yeah. Ego is a funny thing, though. I know that, there's a lot of conflicting thoughts on ego, but I think
it has its place. It's there to serve a purpose.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, we take it everywhere with us, and it always steps forward first, even when we don't need it to.
Yeah. I think Deepak Chopra said something about ego is the part of yourself that looks, that when you step outside of yourself and look at why you're thinking the thoughts and why you're doing the things, that's part of the ego process, and understanding your ego and dismantling that ego. So I love that. Thank you so much, Faye. Like I said, like we said, rather, your new book is out now on Amazon, Making Sense of Me. Super pumped. If you're listening to this podcast, please go and grab yourself a copy. Read it first before you give it to your teenager, so that you can make sure that you can guide them through their healing journey and navigating that communication and connection, as we all want to be doing during the crazy time of adolescence and puberty, because let's be real, it's a wild time.
It's a wild ride, yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last forever.
And in some ways that's a good thing, and in some ways not so good thing, but we do what we can. Like I said, my name is Emma G. Thank you so much for being here. If you are interested in working with Faye, please go to fayecoxcoaching.co.uk, because she is in the UK. I'm here in Washington, DC. My name is Emma G. I am a youth empowerment through songwriting coach, helping your teenagers navigate their life, communication, and connection tools through the art of songwriting and music. Until next week, friends, be kind, be well, stay out of trouble, spread love like it's going out of fashion, and remember to lead with love. Remember that you are love, and everything you could possibly need lives within you. Until next time, guys, peace.